Once upon a time, stories from Leicester Library's Neighbourhood Services. I'm Matt, and I've got a story to tell you today about three men who were stranded on a desert island. They were the only three survivors from a shipwreck. The ship had been caught in a terrific storm some years before, and those three had been washed ashore holding onto a barrel or a spar of wood, and since that time the island had been their home. They were the ship's carpenter, the navigator, and let's call him the fool. He was the younger son of a minor English nobleman. Well, the island, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. The lagoon was teeming with fish. They'd got roots and fruits to eat. In fact, life was not so uncomfortable after all. They'd managed to salvage a few tools from the ship and build some shelters. And things were okay. And the days blurred into weeks, and the weeks blurred into years, and time went by. In fact, they lost track of just how much time had passed. You know, these tropical islands, they don't have seasons like ours. It was hard to keep track. They just have a rainy season once a year. And time was just passing them by. In fact, one of their favourite entertainments in an evening was to argue about just how long they'd been there. The carpenter would say, "Oh, it's been 5 years since we've been on this island now, 5 whole years." The navigator would say, "Oh, no. It's been at least 7 years we've been here." And the fool, always splitting the difference, "I'd say it's 6 years. 6 years on the island, that's how long I think we've been here." The one thing they did know was that the bare bones of their ship, still stranded on that reef, were gradually becoming smaller and smaller and smaller as the relentless tide broke them up and washed them away. The one thing they did agree on, however, was to keep a watch for ships passing by on the horizon that might rescue them and take them home. And that's what they did. Each day someone would sit on the shore and look out over that vast expanse of Pacific water, over those glittering ocean waves, for sign of a ship that might rescue them and give them passage back to England. But in all the years they'd been there, they'd only seen half a dozen ships, and they concluded they were a long way off from any major shipping route, and that rescue, well, it was probably quite unlikely. Anyway, on this day it was the fool's turn to keep watch, and he sat on the shore, watching the waves, watching the sun sparkling on the water, and he saw something bobbing towards him on the surf. The sun would catch it occasionally, and there'd be a glint of green, maybe a flash of metal, and it bobbed closer and closer and closer on the tide. And he watched, and he waited, and he watched, and he waited until the thing bobbed close enough in that he could wade into the shallows and pick it out. And he had in his hand an ornate green glass bottle, bound in some kind of metal, so tarnished from the years in the ocean that it was hard to tell what it was. And in the neck of the bottle was a stopper fixed firmly and bound also with a kind of metal to stop it coming loose. Well, he couldn't work out what this thing was. He scratched his head and he puzzled. He gave it a little shake. And a noise, some kind of noise. It almost sounded like a tiny voice from far, far away. It seemed to be coming from inside the bottle. No, it can't be, he thought. No. He held it up to the light to see if he could see light through the glass, but no, after all that time, who knows how long in the ocean, no, there was nothing to be seen on the inside. But then he felt the bottle shake in his hand, as if something was moving inside. No, it can't be. Now, you probably think, why didn't he just pull out the stopper and have a look? That's what you'd have done. It's probably what I'd have done. But you know, after all this time on a desert island with not really very much to do, he wasn't going to waste that potential for entertainment. No. He was going to wait, and he was going to present that bottle to his friends after dinner that night. And so he stuck his bottle in the sack, and he sat and kept watch. And that night after dinner, just before they could start arguing about how long they'd been there, he pulled out his bottle. He said, look at this thing that washed in on the tide today. Look at this bottle. It's still and quiet now, but I swear, when I shook it earlier, I heard it sounded like a tiny voice from inside. I'm probably going mad. And then it felt like it shook as if something was moving inside. Well, they passed the bottle around. They held it up to the firelight to try and see what they could see inside, but no, you couldn't see through the glass. It was too weathered and too battered by the ocean. But passing it from hand to hand, all that jostling, it had caused something, because again, there was a voice or something coming from inside. They couldn't make out any words, but it did. It sounded like a tiny voice, and the bottle shook as if something was moving within. Well, of course, they wanted to pull out the stopper. The carpenter said, "I'll give me the bottle, I'll pull out the stopper." And the navigator said, No, I'll pull the stopper. And the fool said, but I found the bottle, I should pull the stopper. Well, of course, an enormous argument ensued, and they argued and they fought about who would pull out the stopper. And eventually it was decided that the carpenter, who was, after all, the eldest amongst them and the most skilled with tools, he would loosen the metal bindings to release the stopper. The navigator would take his turn and take out the stopper itself, whilst the fool would hold the bottle steady for the other two. And that's what they did. The carpenter set to work carefully until the metal had been removed. The navigator started to twist the top of the bottle, working it loose. It had been there a long time. It was stiff. Until, pop, the bottle top came out. And whoosh, in a cloud of steam or smoke or something, whoosh, something appeared from the bottle and materialised until there was a huge man, muscled, standing in front of them, golden bracelets on each wrist, huge golden rings in each ear, standing mightily. Well, they couldn't believe it. I mean, they'd heard of the genies of the desert, of course, but surely they were myths like mermaids or goblins or elves. They rubbed their eyes. When they looked again, the huge man was still there. "I am Ejasam the Mighty, Jinn of the desert," the huge man said. "You have released me from millennia of captivity in this bottle, and it is my obligation to grant you each a wish before I claim my freedom. But take care, for when a wish is made, a wish shall be granted." Well, they huddled together to decide who should wish first and what they should wish for. And they discussed it, and they weren't going to allow the jinn to see them fighting, so they were quite calm this time. They talked, and eventually it was decided that the carpenter should make the first wish. "I wish," he said, "that I should be transported back to my Bristol home to be with my wife and family that I left so many years before." And poof, in a flash of light, he was gone. Then it was the navigator's turn. I'd always dreamed of being the senior navigator and sailing master on a crack frigate out of Plymouth. That's what I wished for. And poof, in a flash of light, he was gone. And then, last of all, it was the fool's turn to make his wish. And he looked around the camp, and he sighed, suddenly lonely. And he said, "Oh, I wish I had my friends back." Now, if there's a moral to this story, it is surely this: when making important plans, be sure you know what the fool is likely to do. And that's the story of Three Men on an Island. And if you enjoyed it, you should go off and tell one of your friends. Thank you very much. Bye.